we've been learning a lot of the foundational structure of the book of Daniel, and we've discovered the significance, the great significance of Daniel chapter 4. We've learned about dreams and visions. We've learned about literal dreams and visions and symbolic dreams and visions. We're learning more and more about timelines. We're learning how timelines begin and end. Some of these things we will review again tonight. If there's questions, feel free to ask them. And this, of course, this chapter is about King Nebuchadnezzar's troubled dream, the dream of the tree. And these prophetic keys we are becoming very familiar with, because they are the hermeneutic principles retrieved from his word to guide us to let Scripture interpret Scripture and keep us on that narrow path. So this chapter, which was so interesting, was written by King Nebuchadnezzar. So this was the second dream he had. Remember, he had the dream of the statue. And Daniel, of course, was asked to give the interpretation, which he does. And we know he actually only had to give the application, and we'll get into that as well, because he knew what a tree stood for in Yahweh's word. We already know for sure that this was a literal vision. And this is why maybe the king remembered it so well. And this literal vision did not need any outside interpretation from Yahweh or Gabriel, because Ezekiel had written about what trees meant 20 years prior in his book, which Daniel would have been familiar with. And we've learned in literal dreams and visions, they can employ types and similes and metaphors to create the understanding and comparisons. So in this example, the tree equated to the king. So those are just 3 prophetic keys that are listed in your books on page 16 through, I think, like 21. But refer to these often. We may not go through all of them verbatim, but you know where they're at, and they're priceless. And Charlene has them all collected for us. Now, last week, we learned of a new prophetic key or hermeneutic principle, and that was Yahweh does not repeat things that are of no great consequence. And Charlene shared with me a scripture verse, and you may want to also pencil this in, like on page 16. It's just right in your Bible as well, Genesis 41:32. And it said, and the dream was repeated to Pharaoh twice, because the word is established by Elohim, and Elohim is hastening to do it. So Charlene, would you like to say a few words about Genesis 41:32?
Just a few words. Basically, the dream that the Pharaoh had was one of 5 fat cows and 5 skinny cows, and then there was 5 plump heads of wheat and 5 that were shriveled up. And the reason that it was given to the king twice is to let him know that it was of great significance. So when he relayed the dream to Joseph, whom he had found out could interpret dreams at that point in time, Joseph told him that the dream was given twice because it was sure that there was going to be 7 years of plenty and 7 years of famine, and that the best thing that the Pharaoh could do was to prepare. That the great Elohim was revealing this to him so that he could be ready to take care of the people in his territory. So this is very interesting to find this prophetic key right here in the Torah, right in Genesis. And as you go through the scriptures, you're going to find that this is a principle all the way through. So if there's something that is mentioned more than once, so that means 2 times, 3 times or 4 times. So one instance, there's many Bible stories or Bible testimonies that are mentioned 2 times between Kings and Chronicles. That's easy to find. But the miracle of Hezekiah's sundial is given mention 3 times in the Old Testament. And I think I might have mentioned this before, that the very first time that I read my Bible through from cover to cover, and that was in year 2000, and I really didn't know anything but just to read the Bible at that point, was I noticed that that sundial event was there 3 times. Now, I found that kind of interesting because I really didn't know too much, you know, maybe just some Bible stories, but that is of great significance, especially for calendar. Then when we talked about Daniel 4 last week, the 7 times timeline was mentioned 4 times. That's an unusual number of times. So remember when I asked you way back about the first week that we were doing this, you know, when it's mentioned 4 times, what would that mean? And somebody popped up and said, well, that must mean it's important. Well, you're absolutely right. So when you come along to the timeline of the 1260 days, and it is given mention 7 times, 2 times in Daniel, 1 in chapter 7, 1 in chapter 12, and then another 5 times between Revelation 11, 12, and 13, then you know that that timeline is something very, very important. And we did mention just slightly that that timeline always has something to do with Yah's people. So just as you're going through your studies, when you see things that are mentioned more than once, just remember there might be something really important about that, and go searching to find out what it is. That's all I have to say.
All right. Well, thank you, Charlene. All right. Nebuchadnezzar authors a chapter of scripture, and this letter is addressed to the nations. So would someone like to read these first 7 scriptures for us?
I can.
Okay, great.
Daniel 4:1, Nebuchadnezzar the sovereign, to all prophets, nations,
Peoples.
and, oh, sorry, yes.
Okay.
I guess I better get a little closer. All people, nations, and languages that dwell in all the earth. Peace, shalom, be increased to you. I thought it good to declare the signs and wonders which the Most High Allah has worked for me. How great are his signs, and how mighty his wonders. His reign is an everlasting reign, and his rulership is from generation to generation. Nebuchadnezzar's second dream. Nebuchadnezzar was at rest in his house and prospering at my house and prospering in my palace. I saw a dream, and it frightened me, and the thoughts on my bed and the visions of my head alarmed me. So I issued a decree to bring in all the wise ones of Babylon, on Baal before me, to make known to me the interpretation of the dream. So the magicians and the astrologers, the Kadishim, and the diviners came in and related the dream to I related the dream to them, but its interpretation they did not make known to me.
Okay, so the opening scriptures are very pertinent because this is Nebuchadnezzar's testament right here, and he's proclaiming it to all peoples, nations, and languages that dwell in all the earth. So that's for those present during his time period, but it is also sending us a powerful message today. And he's also proclaiming how great Yahweh is and how mighty he is. and his reign is an everlasting reign, and his rulership is from generation to generation. I mean, he's proclaiming about the one true Elohim. And then he recounted his dream that frightened him. And so he wakes up and he wants his so-called wise ones to come and tell him what it meant. And but they could not do so. So along the way, we're going to see these prophetic keys connected to these verses, and it's very well laid out in your books. And in verse 2, it's connected to prophetic key number 12. Time always moves forward, right? Forward progressive movement. And we also have cross-reference scriptures in Genesis 41:8 and Isaiah 44:24 and 25. And so those can be referenced as we go along as well, because these dreams and visions came to other kings and pharaohs in the past as well. And often they would use their so-called wise men and magicians, but many times they could not interpret them because they were not connected to the one true Elohim. Okay, so in this account, King Nebuchadnezzar made known his dream to his magicians, astrologers, diviners, but they still were not able to interpret his dream for him. And then we progress on to verse 8 through 13. Would someone like to read those verses?
Again, this is Jeanette.
Okay.
Daniel called to apply the dream. Daniel 4:8. And at last Daniel, whose name is Belteshazzar, according to the name of my El, came before me. In him is the spirit of the set apart Elohim. So I related the dream to him, saying, Belteshazzar, chief of the magicians, because I know that the spirit of the set apart Elohim is in you, and no secret is too difficult for you. Explain to me the visions of my dream that I have seen, and its interpretation. Now the visions of my head on my bed were these. I looked and saw a tree in the midst of the earth, and its height great. The tree became great and strong, and its height reached to the heavens, and it was visible to the ends of all the earth. Its leaves were lovely, and its fruit plenty, and in it was food for all. The beasts of the field found shade under it, and the birds of the heavens dwelt in its branches, and all flesh was fed from it. In the visions of my head on my bed, I looked and saw a watcher, even a set apart one, coming down from the heavens.
Okay, so we know that Daniel has no problem applying what this tree meant, and we already discussed that because it's related to Ezekiel, the book of Ezekiel, and where in verse 3, 5, and 6, behold, the Assyrian was a cedar in Lebanon with fair branches and of an high stature, and his top was among the thick boughs. So it's already been established in the past that trees were connected to kings and pharaohs. And we also see that in prophetic key number 20, we also know that that proper application of the watcher was a holy one. And so we know that that was an angel from heaven. And so we know also that the proper application of the tree was to the king. And so Daniel was aware of this. Now, as I studied those scriptures that Jeanette just read, I have this question, and like I shared, I want this to kind of be a freelance night that we can discuss and bring our thoughts to the table. And this was my personal question that came up. What current nation resembles the description of Daniel 4:10 through 12? Now, of course, our approach to the book of Daniel is from history. It's a historical remez approach. But at the same time, as I have mentioned, we live in unprecedented times. So we're going to blend a little bit of current day into our study. I don't want to go into any great depth, but at the same time, we are the watchmen on the wall. And we are seeing everything unfold before our eyes in an unprecedented fashion, things we have not seen before, and things that have affected the whole world. So let me just read what Jeanette read and just see what nation do you think of when you hear this? In present day, if you will. I looked and saw a tree in the midst of the earth, and its height great. The tree became great and strong, and its height reached to the heavens, and it was visible to the ends of all the earth. Its leaves were lovely, and its fruit plenty, and in it was food for all. The beasts of the field found shade under it, and the birds of the heavens dwelt in its branches, and all flesh was fed by it. Does that sound familiar to anyone? If we were to apply it today? Well, I'll tell you what came to me. and the U.S. is what came to my mind. And this came to me, and I went and did some research, and I really couldn't find anyone that was tracking with me on that thought. But then I thought about Tom Stapleton's work, and we know he's recently done some work from the Drash interpretation of applying things to our day and time. And honestly, I wasn't expecting to find anything because I thought his focus were on the latter chapters of Daniel. So I was really rather pleased to find that he saw that too. So he saw the connection to America with this type of description. So I'm just sharing a little clip from his book. It said, in these first chapters of Daniel, there are ominous prophetic insights to the future. And he said one potential, underline potential, one potential end time prophetic fulfillment of this historical event could, underline could very well take place in the United States, as Nebuchadnezzar was ruler of the greatest nation until that time. So too, the United States is the greatest nation this world has ever seen. President Donald Trump, in making America great again, will glory in pride, as did Nebuchadnezzar, as will be seen in Daniel's chapter 7 and 8. The United States will fall from its lofty height, but before that happens, the U.S. will experience a time of prosperity under President Trump. When he begins to glory in his accomplishment, we can expect the United States to fall from grace. Now, that's one perspective, and we have to keep in mind, we are all in the sanctification process, and unless history unfolds, we don't know for sure all the players. We can have some possibilities, and that's what I want us to look at tonight, some possibilities and understanding this beast that is so well laid out in Charlene's book. It's a conglomerate, we will see, as we've read previously in Revelation 13. We will see more unholy alliances in Revelation 17. So this was rather pertinent. And I'm going to show you tonight some more connections to the time of history we are speaking about in Daniel 4. So hang in there with me. All right. So verses 14 through 16, if someone would read those. Okay.
Oh, I can go ahead. Daniel 4:14 to 16 is what you want?
Please, thank you.
He cried aloud and he said this. He cried aloud and he said this. hew down the tree and cut off its branches. Strip off its leaves and scatter its fruit, and let the beasts flee from under it and the birds from its branches. But leave the stump, which is the kingdom, of its roots in the earth, even with a band of iron and bronze, in the tender grass of the field, and let it be wet with the dew of the heavens, and let his portion be with the beasts on the grass of the earth. Verse 16, let his heart be changed from man's, and let him be given the heart of a beast, and 7 times, or 7 literal years, shall pass over him.
Okay, very good. And also there's cross-reference verses for verse 14 and 15 as well, because we read in Matthew 3:10, and now also the axe is laid unto the root of the trees. Therefore every tree which bringeth not forth good fruit is hewn down and cast into the fire. And Job 14, verse 7 through 9, for there is hope of a tree, if it be cut down, that it will sprout again, and that the tender branch thereof will not cease. Though the root thereof wax old in the earth, and the stalk thereof die in the ground, yet through the scent of water it will bud and bring forth boughs like a plant. So there, for Nebuchadnezzar, he sprouts again. He never returned to the full glory days, but he does return. So he did have hope because of that branch rising up again, sprouting again. We already have defined times, and that is technically a year. So this 7 times or 7 years timeline is the first of 7 timelines in the book of Daniel. All timelines, again, begin with a decree. Now, another key point that I wanted to bring out from Tom Stapleton's book, we can expect a nation or a kingdom that walks in pride to be humbled. And he shared the United States with President Trump may, underline may, ominously fit an end-time fulfillment of Nebuchadnezzar's pride before his fall. Now, the head leader of Babylon, Nebuchadnezzar, was chopped down, yet, as we shared, a stump remained. Though Nebuchadnezzar is returned to his kingship, Babylon doesn't return to its peak glory days. Jeremiah 6:28, all of them are rebels of rebels, walking as slanderers. They are bronze and iron. All of them are corrupters. So Jeremiah, that was when Jeremiah was prophesying to the southern house of Judah. And they were very, very rebellious, and they would not repent. And so that's why they ended up being taken to Babylon. And Yahweh allowed the nation of Babylon to overtake them. Now let's listen to this short clip from PureFlix on this specific part of the book of Daniel.
Listen then, as I tell of the prophetic vision that led to Nebuchadnezzar's madness. For when he dreamed that great dream, his enchanters, sorcerers, and astrologers were once again unable to interpret the vision.
When I was asleep, I had a dream which made me afraid. The images I saw terrified me. Belteshazzar, I looked and saw before me a tree in the middle of the land. The tree grew strong and tall. Its top touched the sky, and it was visible to the ends of the earth. Its leaves, they were beautiful. Its fruit was abundant. The beasts of the field took shelter under it, and the birds of the air lived in its branches, and from it every creature was fed. Then I looked again, And I saw a messenger coming down from heaven, and he cried out aloud, "Cut down the tree, trim off its branches, strip its leaves, scatter its fruit. Let the beasts flee from under it and the birds fly from its branches. But let the stump and its roots, bound in iron and brass, remain in the ground, in the grass of the field. Let it be drenched by the dew from heaven. Let it live with the animals of the earth, and let its mind be changed from that of a man to the mind of an animal." This is the dream that I had. What does it mean?
My lord, if only the dream applied to your enemies and its meaning to your adversaries. The tree which you saw, which grew large and strong with its top touching the sky, you, O king, are that tree. You have become great and strong. Your greatness has grown until it reaches the sky, and your dominion extends to the distant parts of the earth. But you saw a messenger, a holy one, coming down from heaven, saying, "Cut down the tree and destroy it, but leave the stump bound with iron and bronze in the grass of the field, while its roots remain in the ground. Let him be drenched with the dew of heaven. Let him live like wild animals." This is the interpretation, O king. And this is the decree that the Most High has issued against my lord the king. You will be driven away from people and live with the wild animals. You will eat grass like cattle until you acknowledge that the Most High is sovereign over the kingdoms of men and gives them to anyone he wishes. The command to leave the stump of the tree with its roots means that your kingdom will be restored to you when you acknowledge that the Most High rules. Therefore, O king, be pleased to accept my advice. Renounce your sins by doing what is right, and your wickedness by being kind to the oppressed. Seek the Lord while he may be found. And it may be that your prosperity will continue.
But the memory of kings is often short. And 12 months later, when the king was walking on the roof of the royal palace of Babylon.
In all the world, is there anything like this?
No, my king.
My great wall, which, mountain-like, cannot be moved, I've made with mortar and brick. Its foundations I've placed upon the very bosom of the underworld. Its top I've raised mountain high. Is this not the great Babylon that I have built as my royal palace with my mighty power for the glory of my majesty?
His words were still on his lips when a voice came down from heaven.
Nebuchadnezzar, for your arrogance and your failure to give glory to the Most High, your authority is stripped from you. Go now from this kingdom which you claim. Your mind shall be reduced to that of an animal, and you will wander the land until you acknowledge the glory of God as above your own.
Immediately what had been said about Nebuchadnezzar was fulfilled. Sought to make himself as great as he who rules above heaven, and the Lord would not have it. Because he insisted on being more than he was made, He became less than he was made, because he aspired to be more than a man. He became less than a man. He became like the wild beasts.
How did he survive, alone in the wilds?
Even in his insanity, neither the lion nor the bear disturbed him, though he wandered alone and unarmed, and slept naked in the places where they found their food. Because it had been prophesied that one day he would honor the Most High. For 7 years he ranged the wild lands of Babylon.
No one may say him nay.
Beware your place, for I am not as I was. Let it be recorded that I, Nebuchadnezzar, do praise, exalt, and glorify the King of heaven, because everything he does is right, and all his ways are just. And those who walk in pride, he is able to humble.
And so Nebuchadnezzar returned to his throne, but eventually he was gathered to his fathers, and a series of new kings came to the throne.
Okay, so we have that excerpt that laid it all out for us. And if we look at applying things today, we see a lot of alliances made with the evangelical movement, with the Chabad Lubavitch movement and connections with President Trump. We see executive orders being signed. And so I'm just saying we need to be mindful of this, these times we live in. And we know the motto, "Make America Great Again." And there has been much boasting, and the United States has not wanted for much at all. So it goes on into verse 17 and 18. It says, "This matter is by the decree of the watchers, and the command by the word of the set apart one, so that the living know that the Most High is ruler in the reign of men, and gives it to whomever he wishes, and sets over it the lowest of men. This dream have I seen, I, sovereign Nebuchadnezzar, and you, Belteshazzar, reveal its interpretation, since all the wise ones of my reign are unable to make known to me the interpretation. But you are able, for the spirit of the set apart Elohim is in you." So we know in this chapter 4, we have our first prophetic timeline, and all the details and specifics are given right there. It was 7 times, 7 meaning 7 literal years, because this was a literal vision. It was in conjunction with King Nebuchadnezzar and his pride. The prophetic scriptures for the timelines are noted there. There was a speaking voice decree from heaven, which begins the king's probation in verse 29 and 31. The timeline begins with the king being driven to the field as a wild beast. And then we have the speaking voice decree, the king's voice of praise in verse 34. And the timeline ends with deliverance from insanity after 7 years, 7 exact years. So we're seeing the exactness of these timelines. So the definition for decree in theology, predetermined purpose of Yahweh, the purpose or determination of an immutable being whose plan of operations is, like himself, unchangeable. And so it's important to note prophetic key 26 and 27. All timelines in Daniel and Revelation begin and end with decrees. That's extremely important, and that's going to be extremely important for us in our day. So when we hear decrees, we make note of them. Will they all pan out to be something? Probably not. But it's good to be aware of these decrees. These decrees can be either through the legislation of an earthly judicial system or through a divine heavenly voice like Nebuchadnezzar heard. But make note that these decrees can also be through the legislation of an earthly judicial system. Once a decree is given, the timeline begins and is not interrupted until the timeline is complete. Timelines must also end with either the earthly judicial voice or a voice from heaven. You know, right there, that's a powerful key. And I didn't know that key until we started studying Daniel. And I'm studying Daniel with all of you, and I'm learning with all of you. And so, you know, this is just fantastic. And then in key number 27, this prophetic timeline begins with bad news. The king realized that bad news was associated with the tree being cut down by the Holy One from heaven. So now we know now from our studies, all timelines in Daniel and Revelation begin and end with decrees. So this also came to me that we may need to be very mindful of, because it was a major proclamation. And can a proclamation equal a decree? Possibly. I'm just saying this is a possibility. But we're going to see some further connections, so don't write all of this off yet. So with this CV outbreak, if you will, coronavirus outbreak, we know that Donald Trump declares a national emergency over COVID-19. Now, we also know it's just not coincidence that COVID could also possibly stand for Certificate of Vaccination ID. And the number 19, Carol Ann brought to my attention that in our particular alphabet, 1 represents A and 9 represents I, AI. Could be just a coincidence, just sharing, and everyone can come to their own conclusions. So March 13th, 2020, personally, I'm just penciling that in on my calendar. Maybe nothing comes of it, maybe something does, don't know. I'm just a watchman on the wall and observing the days we live in. So it says US President Donald Trump has declared a national emergency amid the novel coronavirus pandemic. Today, he goes on to say, I'm officially declaring a national emergency. And his whole proclamation can be viewed online that he declared on March 13th, 2020. I do know there were some significant changes in that time period. I do know there was chatter, and that may have been all it was, but there seemed to be a change in status with President Trump. He did not seem to be as bold and what's the word I'm trying to think of? Self-assured of himself. There was chatter about, well, where's the presidential seal here or there? Where was the presidential flag? It wasn't always where people thought it should have been. That may have not been any big deal. They may have had to change locations a lot. But there has seemed to be a change there. And I was just talking to my husband recently about, you know, this is supposed to be an election season, but there doesn't seem to be any debates. There doesn't seem to be much election chatter at all. So anyway, I just take all these things in and ponder them as a watchman on the wall. But we can pencil that date in. Like I said, that's not the only date I want us to consider, but it's one that I think we should pencil in. So I think we should note it. Now, Daniel interprets the second dream and gives the application. In verse 19, it says, "Then Daniel, whose name was Belteshazzar, was stunned for a short time, and his thoughts alarmed him. The sovereign responded and said, 'Belteshazzar, do not let the dream or its interpretation alarm you.' Belteshazzar answered and said, 'My master, the dream is to those who hate you, and its interpretation to your enemies,'" because he was very hesitant to give such a report to a king. And we see that connected to prophetic key 21, and we've gone over that key several times. Daniel 4, prophecy is written in literal language. And we note in the King James Version of the Bible, the word interpretation refers both to interpretation of symbols and application of literal language. We go on with the description of the tree. "The tree you saw, which became great and strong, whose height reached to the heavens and was visible to all the earth, whose leaves were lovely and its fruit plenty, and in it was food for all, under which the beasts of the field dwelt, and on whose branches the birds of the heavens sat. It is you, O sovereign, for you have become great and strong, and your greatness has grown and has reached to the heavens, and your rulership to the end of the earth." So the tree represented King Nebuchadnezzar. We know it was a literal dream because it was a regular tree. It wasn't a symbolic tree. It was a regular tree that we're familiar with. And the great tree applied to the great king. And he was a great king. And what was amazing about King Nebuchadnezzar is that he acknowledged Yahweh as the one true living Elohim. And like Chuck Missler has preached before, he said, "I will not be surprised if King Nebuchadnezzar is in the heavens when I get there." And I agree with him. You know, he's speaking powerfully for the one true living Elohim. So we saw that with this tree being literal, we saw the use of similes to give the king the application of this literal dream. And we go on about the holy beings cutting down the tree. And as the sovereign saw a watcher, even a set apart one, coming down from the heavens, and he said, "Hew down the tree and destroy it, but leave the stump of its roots in the earth, even with a band of iron and bronze in the tender grass of the field. And let it be wet with the dew of the heavens, and let his portion be with the beast of the field, till 7 times pass over him." Again, that new prophetic key, the repetition, and we saw how important those repetitions are in Daniel 4 last Tuesday. And all of that is recorded and up on my YouTube channel and my BitChute channel. So again, we're going to see this recorded also in Daniel 5, verse 21. "And he was driven from the sons of men, and his heart was made like the beast, and his dwelling was with the wild asses. They fed him with grass like oxen, and his body was wet with the dew of heaven, till he knew that the Most High Elohim ruled in the kingdom of men, and that he appointed over it whomever he willed." This is the interpretation, O sovereign, and this is the decree of the Most High, which has come upon the master, the sovereign. The term 7 times is given once in the vision, twice in the application section of the structure chart that we looked at last week, and once in the fulfilled prophecy. In all passages, the timeline refers to 7 literal years. Very important. And we already discussed how it begins with some type of decree. So my question also is this: should we be looking for a 7-year timeline in our present day? You know, because I wanted to bring this up because, you know, some people go, well, where are people getting this 7-year tribulation, if you will? Because many, you know, of us look at the first 3.5 years as being a tribulation, and the last 3.5 years being a great tribulation. So I'm asking anybody, you know, should we be looking for a 7-year timeline in our present day? How do y'all feel about that?
Well, I'd like to pipe up, I guess.
Okay, great. April?
Since Yeshua always has Shemitahs, and he has these specified years and groups, like the Shemitah and like the Jubilees. You have 7 Shemitahs, you have the Jubilee. I think it's very relevant. And then we have here Daniel, which is pretty much an end time scenario, because we have the sovereign of the world, and that's what they're trying to achieve, is the sovereign of the world. I think it's very relevant.
Right.
I don't know. I hope other people have more ideas, but that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
And I think it was through Lighted Way Ministries that she divided things up into the last 7 years of the 1290 and then the 1260. You add that together, and that's pretty close to 7 years. And right in the middle there's a 30-day where the kings of the earth give their power unto the beast. So there is a change right there. I don't know, we just have to keep our eyes open and, just like you said, be a watchman and see what's happening around us. And I think it's vital for us to understand. And then all these kind of go in with the feast days, and definitely calendar, because when he talks about the 3.5, which is 3.5 on this side, 30 days, 3.5 on this side, 30 days, it all has to do with his feast days and counting and understanding where we are on his calendar, so we can coincide with current events along with what is going to happen on Yah's calendar as to what is happening in the heavens that he wants his people to be aware of and know where we are in the scheme of time.
Exactly, April. Very well said. And this is one of the main reasons why we are studying the book of Daniel and studying timelines, because, you know, Charlene's been at this a whole lot longer than us, but these are things we have grappled with, and we're trying to find the answer. And it's best to, you know, search the scriptures and look at this and understand timelines, because those timelines are going to lead us to these answers that we'll say, oh, that's what it was. And yes, Christine, did you have some input?
No, I just had a question, actually.
Okay.
You think, you know, back in that time, Yah spoke to that king Nebuchadnezzar, and Daniel then interpreted, and you just wonder about his presence in Trump's life, or his, you know, where is he moving in this current situation, is what I'm saying.
Right. And, you know, and we truly don't know. We do know this: it is our responsibility to pray for all world leaders. And I usually pray that Yahweh's perfect will be done in their lives. And because it's Yahweh that appoints leaders. And so we pray that his perfect will be done. And as far as the connection of like President Trump with Yahweh, of course, we don't know the details, but Yahweh does, because he knows every person's heart. I saw someone, Christine, did you have your hand? You wanted to make another comment?
No, I was just taking it down, but I was just wondering, because I don't see anything like that in today's situation, with all that is happening and all the people that are being exposed with their involvement with sex trafficking and things like that. And you just wonder, Yah, where are you? We're so deep into this, into sin, the
Right.
world,
Right.
with abortion, with sex trafficking, to transvestite, to these are horrific
Right.
things.
Right.
And
And
you just wonder, where is it going to? So when is he going to come and intercede and things happen?
right. And he has, of course, we know he has interceded, but at the same time, he's got to let prophecy unfold. And nations, he allows nations really to pretty much go down the tube, if you will, as far as he lets their cup of iniquity reach that full and overflowing point, and then he moves. And there is a coming judgment. And we see that clearly in the book of Revelation. So the only way, since we are believers, we are Israel grafted in, and we all come through the door of Yahushua HaMashiach, and we are washed by the blood of the Lamb. So that's the only way to be saved out from among all these nations, because the end time beast is a conglomerate of most of the 7 continents, and his people are scattered among all these nations. So the only way to have hope is to be able to have Yahusha and go through that door. So with this 7-year timeline, and this is what I'm hoping to understand more clearly, and I'm just sharing it with y'all. The reason why I believe that there's a 7-year timeline that will unfold, and I feel like the 3.5 years will be great tribulation, is from Daniel 9:27. I was comparing those scripture verses, and I don't want to get into this too heavy, but I'm just going to hit several translations. It says, he will confirm his promise with many for one set of 7 time periods. And in the book of Jubilees, the translation of Jubilees, it says, in 1 week, and they put in parentheses, they are now 70, meaning the 70th week, he shall confirm the covenant by many. And on the, let's see, and the last one is, he shall confirm a covenant with many. And on the wing of abomination, he shall lay waste even until the complete end. So that messed up. Hold on just a second. Let me get this out of the way now so we can see this one. I didn't have it right. So this one translation says, make firm a covenant with many for 1 week. Or the next one is, a strong order will be sent. So it's not always stated as a covenant. Sometimes it's stated as a strong order, or in the ERV, it's stated as then the future ruler will make an agreement. And the ESV says, and he shall make a strong covenant. And then the GNB says the ruler will have a firm agreement. So as we get into Daniel 9, eventually, we'll look at this more closely, but it does seem like we will be looking at a 7-year timeline in the end of days. And Mary, did you have your hand up?
Yes, I did. There was something I want to say. When Trump became president, I was not a Melchizedek priest. I was in the, the Babylon, the Christian, church with Christmas and all that. And I just thought he was like the best thing since sliced bread because he believed in Christmas, and he surrounded himself with all these people that I listened to. I mean, like Kenneth Copeland and Hagee and, Joseph Prince, like all of them. And Tracy Cook is one to really look up. He's like not good. Anyway, that said, he thinks that these are the real deal. Mm-hmm. Franklin, the Franklin Graham. Like these are the ones that are people that are advising our president on a spiritual level.
Exactly.
And so, and it's just like, and I used to believe in that, what they were selling kind of thing. I bought it, looked fine. And so I guess we really need for y'all to remove all these people and present him with the truth of the Melchizedek priest.
I'm so glad you, yes, Mary, I'm so glad you pointed that out because I was seeing the same thing. It's important who leaders surround themselves with, because like in Nebuchadnezzar's time, we saw that the wise men and astrologers, they weren't benefiting him. It was the true believer, Daniel and his companions, that benefited him. So that's a very important insight, and I'm glad you shared that. And that's why we should pray for our leaders, because the enemy always tries to snuggle up to the one with the power. And we have to pray that Yahweh sends his wise ones to influence leaders. Because we must remember, Yahweh doesn't want anyone to perish. He came to seek and to save the lost. He didn't come to condemn the world, but to save the world. So we continue to keep leaders in prayers. So Daniel's application, the king likened to a beast, represents the king's insanity for 7 years. Verse 25, that you are going to be driven away from men, and your dwelling be with the beast of the field, and you be given grass to eat like oxen, and you will be wetted with the dew of the heavens, and 7 times pass over you till you know that the Most High ruler in the reign of, till you know that the Most High is ruler in the reign of men, and that he gives it to whomever he wishes. And they that gave the command to leave the stump of its roots of the tree, your reign remains yours from the time you come to know that the heavens are ruling. So they were given the command to leave the stump of the roots. Thy kingdom shall be sure unto thee. So, and we also see in Isaiah 45, verse 1 to 2, thus saith Yahweh to his anointed, to Cyrus, I will break in pieces the gates of brass and cut in sunder the bars of iron. So we know King Cyrus was the king that followed the Babylonian kingdom. We know these are beast kingdoms, and we're going to get into the definition of beast and beast kingdom here shortly. But we see this strong correlation with a U.S. president with the present day Israel in the Middle East. Now we have to understand that the enemy counterfeits and duplicates definitions. And that's why so many people are confused, especially when it comes to Christian Zionism, because I know me and my family were confused by it because we thought the Israel in the Middle East was Israel. That was before we understood that Israel is Yahweh's people, born from above, registered in the heavenlies, and are his royal ambassadors, and that Israel is still scattered all over the earth. So we see this close connection of President Trump with King Cyrus in the same time period that we are looking at. And we know that Yahweh worked through Cyrus in allowing the exiles to return to rebuild the temple and the wall. But this coin was very, very interesting. And I went to just pull this coin up, and what happened was I saw so many different kinds of these commemorative coins connecting to the third temple being built. That in itself is a deception because, again, the enemy has redefined Yahweh's temple. And the true biblical temple, we are the temple because the Ruach HaKodesh, the Holy Spirit, lives in us and through us. We are the temple. And they have twisted the scriptures of Ezekiel to say, oh, that's the temple we need to build. Well, that's wrong. If we just look at a timeline, if that was a conditional, offer made to the exiles, both the house of Israel and the house of Judah, that if they returned to Yahweh, he had the plans and everything written out for Ezekiel for them to have, but they rejected him. And if they would have accepted that agreement, that would have been a second temple. That would have not ever been a third temple. But anyway, that's the kind of confusion that seeps in. So this is commemorative coins to raise funds to build a third temple, which more than likely will house the anti-Messiah. And we will see the abomination of desolation, whether it's a statue, whether it's man appearing there, whether it's affecting our own bodily DNA through injections or some other route. We are just on high alert at these things. So I didn't know how to, if you will look closely at this coin, there's a lot of stuff going on. And I could only think of one person that may have had the answers to some of this interpretation. And that's what I'm going to share with you tonight. He has a YouTube channel, and I'm not promoting any particular YouTube channel or understanding. And I'm not saying I agree with everything that some of these individuals say, but Leland Jones lives in Jerusalem, and he has some insights. And from what I can tell, he is dedicated to Yahweh's word. So with that, let's look at this clip.
What are the temple coins, which you see here, minted by the Sanhedrin, the Jewish council in Jerusalem? Over the course of the last 4 years, the Sanhedrin has been minting commemorative coins. We're going to break down these later in the video, but what you can see is this is 2020. This is their coin for 2020. And we want to do some history. We want to go back and explain what this is. Here's a coin for David. We have another video on this. We're not going to cover the details of every single coin in this video. However, we're going to go over an overview of each one, what this means prophetically, what is the message that they're saying, what is the things that they're doing. Okay, here we have Nikki Haley in the United Nations. So they have 70 nations 70 nations to replace the United Nations. There you saw the altar. Here you see the famous coin of Donald Trump and King Cyrus. And this is very significant. Each time they're issuing this with the dove is related to things that we can see them actually doing. The peace deal coming about, okay? So that's 2018 as well had this temple coin. And we're going to go over the significance of this world creation concert. And this harp, what does this stuff mean? What is being communicated to us? What is the significance of the prophetic times that we are in now? What do these things mean? This is the first one that was minted in 2017. Everyone had to be counted, just like we have a census today. Now you do that through these issuing of coins, okay? And what happened, of course, Caesar was Rome. Rome was the beast, and the Rome then killed the Jews, executed millions of Jews in 70 AD in all the revolts. That was Caesar, okay? But the Jews are doing the same thing in our day. They're putting Caesar on the coin. Now in Daniel chapter 5, he said, Mene, mene, tekel, peres. That was the writing on the wall. Now, we're showing you this replica half shekel. And what they would do is they would either have a coin or the amount of silver in the offering, okay? And I'll show you later in the video the actual archaeology of proof of the actual measurement. But the fascinating thing was, this is what's happening, guys. We're all being measured, we're all being weighed in the scales, in the balance. And the fascinating thing was, a U.S. quarter is actually the same weight. Now, you can see why it is necessary to do the backdrop of information to describe what is going on with the temple coins, okay? The spiritual principles that are behind the things that we are seeing here, okay? These are some examples of these temple coins. So let's make no mistake, guys. It was the Sanhedrin that executed Jesus Christ, okay? They were the ones that took him to trial. And so when they issue a coin and they're talking about war, and they're saying there's a war between the saints of light and the sons of light and the sons of darkness, who do you think the war is? Okay, what do you think is going on here? Okay? Who is it that the Sanhedrin is talking about? Who is the sons of light? Who is the sons of the darkness? Nothing has changed in 2,000 years, guys. Okay? The sons of light, they call themselves the sons of light, okay? But they call us the sons of darkness, and they're making war with us. But all the things that they have been doing, we can see in these coins. So this is our new one. They just issued. This is why we're so upset, because you can see war with the saints. Now let's remember, when the census is taken, that the census is for the men 20 years old or older, those that are for war, okay? So it's a census where you count all the people, but it's also counting those that are qualifying for war. So that's what this coin is issuing, okay? And they got their guy right here. Now you can see this is the one for 2020. We're going to go back and briefly mention each one. But what happens is something happens and then they issue a coin. So this one you can see they have Donald Trump, they have Benjamin Netanyahu, and they're commemorating the peace deal. Okay? But they're not commemorating the peace deal with peace, they're commemorating it with war. Now here you can see the other side of the coin. They have King Cyrus, okay? And you can see it says, Cyrus, my anointed king. So they're telling us who their anointed king is, who their Cyrus is. It's Donald Trump. There's no question about it. You can see what it says here, anointed king, and then it says right here, Isaiah 45. Donald Trump is the 45th U.S. president. and you have this lion, okay? Nebuchadnezzar was a type of lion in sun worship. He has a sword, okay? And again, we can see this beast type face in the crown. So guys, this isn't your face. This is what's going on. I'm just showing you what this stuff means. So this is your 2020 coin. Now, what you have is in each one, it's a temple coin. So they'll have a rendering of the third temple. And so what it means is that something related to that temple is happening, okay? Now, in this one, what they have is they have the 70 nations, okay? The Sanhedrin is also 70 seats, and we showed you those in the synagogue. So in this one, now the 70 nations are seated, okay? So that's why they have that. And this is the temple coin. So let's remember, they told us about the peace deal in this other coin. We'll look at this some more, but this is what's happening. We told you the covenant, the agreement is between the United States and Israel. It's between the king of Babylon, Donald Trump, and the king of Jerusalem, Benjamin Netanyahu. Okay, they told us this peace deal in this coin, and this one was commemorating Donald Trump's moving of the U.S. Embassy. Okay, but on it they have the dove with the olive branch. Okay, peace deal. Now this is the one in 2019. 2019 they issued this coin, and you can see the half shekel is in the altar. Remember guys, this is the beast. So they dedicated the altar that after this coin, right? That was that was in December 2019. They did the altar dedication. But why are they putting the coin in the altar? Well, they're putting the coin in the altar because they are going to kill us, okay? They're throwing us in the altar, and they're sacrificing us to build their third temple. That's what all this dreadful symbolism is, okay, in these coins. So what happened here is they invited Nikki Haley to be their leader of the 70 nations, okay? So they announced that they would replace the United Nations. That's why you see the United Nations there. And they says 70 nations organization in Jerusalem. And what that is that's to replace the United Nations. But that's why you have Nikki Haley, this was 2019, and the altar dedication. Also in 2019, they issued this coin. And this is David. And they're crowning David. So this is David's crown, and they issued a commemorative coin for the third temple. Okay, so here you can see 3 temples. 1, 2, 3. The temple coin, again, by the Sanhedrin. And so what they were doing is they're dedicating their place. He said David brought the threshing floor. Okay, so David brought the threshing floor. So that's David. Now David came to Jerusalem, and of course he built the temple. So they're saying the third temple is David's threshing floor. Now we know that the Temple Mount, they call the Temple Mount for the third temple, we know that is Fortress Antonia. Okay? But they don't recognize that the temple was in the city of David. So what they're doing is they're making a strong campaign, and they're saying that the third temple, or the third temple, will be built on the Roman fortress. Okay, we know that's a fulfillment of Daniel 11, verse 31, where the Beit HaMikdash, the house, will be built on the fortress. Okay, so again, what they're saying here is that David bought the threshing floor. So they bought the threshing floor. They're going about getting in place their third temple to be on their Temple Mount, which we know is a Roman fortress. Now, the 2018 temple coin that they issued, you can see they have a kind of rendering of David, okay? And David has a harp. But at the time, I didn't realize what this was, Okay, this temple coin, they have David playing a harp. Now, if you watch the recent videos, we can see that the harp in the Greek is kithara. And this word kithara is the word that Daniel uses in Daniel chapter 3. It's the kithara that was the music that they played to worship the beast. So Nebuchadnezzar set up a statue, okay, and the people had to bow at the statue. So they played a kithara, they played a harp, okay. So this happened. Now this is a precise prophecy. It says the harlot will sing after 70 years. So you can see it's 2018, and after the forming of the nation of Israel in 1948, 70 years, it brings you precisely to 2018. So that's why they had the harp. And on the other side of the coin was commemorating the World Creation Concert. So at the time, I didn't know what this meant. I didn't know, I'm like, what are they talking about? What is this music for the third temple? What is this coin? What does this all mean? Well, we come to understand that the World Creation Concert that they held in 2018, it was for the beast, okay? It was the music for the beast. That's what it was. It was the music for the third temple. So the harlot sings after 70 years, okay? So it's after 70 years, and that's a prophecy of Tyrus that you'll find in Isaiah chapter 23. Now in 2017, they issued this commemorative coin, and as soon as I saw that, I looked at this, and to me, I could see clearly what it is. I'll describe it to you in a moment. But I don't know if they actually did a physical rendering of this coin, but I just want you to look at the thing here. I don't know if it's coming out in the video well, but this is really strange looking. You can see this guy, see this face? Okay, you got this face thing, and then it has two wings on either side. It's got like a beard. Okay, this is really strange looking, guys. I don't know what that is. I'm just saying this is the rendering of the coin of 2017, but it looks like the beast, and it looks like, you know, there's like a crown above its head, which when coming out of that is the third temple. So very strange rendering here. And then these two things on the side, they say they're two cherubim, but they're clearly pointing to some Antichrist-like figure. And so when I looked at this was in 2017. Now, what was the significance of 2017? See, we have the rounded section and squared off section. And so what I began to realize is I saw this. This is the architectural drawing of the chamber of hewn stone. You can see it here kind of superimposed over this rounded section here. And you see it's squared off, it's rounded, and there's the menorah. So that seemed to be commemorating the dedication of the chamber of hewn stone. Now remember that in this there are 70 seats in this section, and back here there's 24 here. Now in these photos it's not showing you, but if you guys remember, it was right here that they had the Hanukkah, the candlestick, okay? So it seems that the 2017 coin was telling us about this dedication of the chamber of hewn stone and commemorating that. Now that coin was issued in September, and then of course by December they had dedicated this chamber of hewn stone, which is part of the third temple. Here's another rendering of what this court looks like, okay? And you have 35 here and 35 here. So that's the same thing we can see in the 2020 coin, is you see two rows of seats. See these round things? These are seats. So in the inner, there's one row, 35, and then the outer is another row of 35. So this is the 70 nations, okay? So what they're saying here is that the 70 nations are seated. They are organized. Well, hopefully you understand what's going on, this war. Okay, they've declared war. The sons of light against the sons of darkness. So this is the meaning of the symbolism behind the Sanhedrin coins.
Okay, so I came across that video clip, and I think he made some very, very good points. And we are seeing some, we may see dimly in the mirror right now, but we are definitely seeing some connection to our present day and mystery Babylon rising. So I know you may all have some questions and insights you want to share, but I want us to go ahead and proceed. Now, Donna sent me this particular clip that's very important because this is talking about the red heifer. We know that those that say they are Jews and are not are, and also some secular Jews are buying into this as far as sacrificing the red heifer and doing a cleansing ceremony, if you will, of their temple. But we know that to reinstitute animal sacrifices and so forth and so on, that's trampling on the blood of Yahusha. However, this really got my attention because they have been looking for a red heifer for quite some time. And many times they are disqualified because they have a white hair come up on them or for whatever reason. But what caught my eye was that they have now 2 red heifers that are already 2 years old that have not been disqualified yet, and they only have to be 3 years old to be ready for sacrifice. So let's listen to this little clip. It's short.
Hashem spoke to Moshe and Aaron, saying, "This is the statute of the Torah, which Hashem commanded, saying, Speak to the children of Israel, and have them take for you a perfectly red, unblemished cow, upon which no yoke was laid." Five years ago, the Temple Institute began its Raise a Red Heifer in Israel project. Just under 2 years ago, we announced the birth of our first red heifer candidates, 2 perfectly red heifers eligible for the historic role of being the red heifer who returns to Israel after 2,000 years, the ability to achieve the highest level of Torah purity. Since their birth, the rabbinic experts of the Temple Institute have been keeping a close watch on these heifers for any non-red hair that a heifer sprouts or any minor injury that the heifer sustains will disqualify it from being a kosher red heifer. This past week, June 2020, we visited our 2 most advanced red heifers and filmed them. In the upcoming weeks, they will receive another visit from the Temple Institute's experts for yet another close inspection. Should either or both of these red heifers remain eligible candidates, we will soon be ready to advance toward the stage of actually preparing the ashes. How wonderful to imagine that these 2 innocent, unsuspecting creatures could, in the very near future, advance Israel and the world to the next stage of the redemption and the building of the Holy Temple.
Okay. Mary, did you have a brief question?
No, I just forgot to take my hand down, sorry.
Okay, all right. So I wanted to just bring that into our awareness. And I thank Donna for sending that to me, but just hold on, just keep your seatbelts buckled. Now, we read in Daniel 4:27, therefore, O sovereign, let my counsel be acceptable to you, and break off your sins by righteousness. We can only break off our sins through belief in Yahweh and his Son, because those that do not have the Son do not have the Father. Now, back in the Old Testament days, if you will, they were made righteous by their faith, knowing that Yahweh was sending the Messiah to wash away our sins. And only through Yahweh and the book of the law that was imposed on them after the sin of the golden calf, and in implementing the sacrificial system that was a type and shadow pointing to the true Messiah that would be coming, that would one day remove their sins as far as the east is from the west. That is what Daniel is telling Nebuchadnezzar. He's saying, let my counsel be acceptable to you and break off your sins by righteousness, and your crookednesses by showing favor to the poor, your prosperity might be extended. Now, apparently he was probably a wheeler and a dealer, and the poor were suffering, just as, you know, today we have so much taxation on our backs, that, and just a flagrant disregard for the hard-earned monies that people have worked for, and they're using these things for probably things against us. So this is the type of wrongness that was happening back then and now. And so we continue on. All this came upon sovereign Nebuchadnezzar. At the end of the 12 months, he was walking about the palace of the reign of Babel. The sovereign spoke and said, is not this great Babel which I myself have built for the house of the reign by the might of my power and for the esteem of my splendor? And we know that that was his pride. And we know that he was not taking care of the poor, apparently. And that was why Daniel told him to break off his sins by righteousness, and your crookednesses by showing favor to the poor. And we read in Psalm 41:1, blessed is he that considereth the poor. Yahweh will deliver him in the time of trouble. And we know in Proverbs 16:18, pride goeth before destruction, and a haughty spirit before a fall. And so we see the prideful statement that Nebuchadnezzar makes. We see in prophetic key 26 that Yahweh gives the king 12 months to repent. And we also read in Isaiah 55:6-7, seek Yahweh while he is to be found. Call on him while he is near. Let the wrong forsake his way, and the unrighteous man his thoughts. Let him return to Yahweh, who has compassion on him, and to our Elohim, for he hardens much. Now, there is so many anti-Messiah spirits that are deceiving people, because in the end of days, our number one enemy is deception. So the next example is an example of not only deception, but blasphemy.
Right. Well, why don't we go ahead and take this next caller, okay? Okay, very good. Caller, you're live on the air. Please tell us your name, where you're calling from.
Hi, this is Steve from Brooklyn. How you doing?
Steve, what's up, brother? How are you, man?
Okay, great. So here's my question. So in the book of Daniel, there are many dreams. Daniel has dreams. Nebuchadnezzar has dreams. One of the dreams that Nebuchadnezzar has is interpreted by Daniel that he's going to act like an animal and basically move into the forest. And so, of course, Nebuchadnezzar's frightened. And what does he tell him? He tells him, give charity. So number one, that's a big knock on Christianity. He doesn't tell him to believe in Jesus. So that's one of the big proofs that I see in the book of Daniel. But outside of that, how does charity act as an atonement? How does it help someone not get punished from heaven? That's my question.
Awesome. Okay, go ahead and nail it.
Thank you.
You are good.
Thank you so much. Have a great one. Stay safe.
Thanks, bro.
Bye-bye.
So Steve is asking about Daniel chapter 4. It's an amazing event that occurs. Nebuchadnezzar is convinced at this stage that Daniel can interpret dreams. In a dream, Nebuchadnezzar sees a huge tree, Its leaves and branches go up to the sky, and animals from all over come to it, and it's just the most magnificent thing in the world. And essentially, it's all torn to pieces. It's all destroyed. Daniel interprets that dream for Nebuchadnezzar, who's the king of Babylon. And Babylon was the world, it's not even superpower, it was the world power after the Assyrian Empire and prior to the Persian Empire. It was the great power in the world. And Daniel explains to Nebuchadnezzar that, in fact, that is what's going to happen to him. That, in fact, he's going to be torn down. His kingdom is going to be torn down. Instead of being the tree that provides shelter and all these things for all the animals, he's going to join the animals. And Daniel does something amazing. He tells Nebuchadnezzar how to atone for his manifold sins. He gives Nebuchadnezzar the information. Because if you were listening to this interpretation by no one less than Daniel, you'd be going, well, what do I do? How do I get myself out of this mess? Because, and again, Nebuchadnezzar did not need convincing that Daniel was a great man of God, was a prophet of God. He knows that already. He's had a very important dream interpreted earlier. So Daniel in chapter 4, in this case it's verse 24, in a Christian Bible, that verse appears as verse 27. So in a Jewish Bible, it's Daniel 4:24, and the key verse here is in a Christian Bible is Daniel 4:27. It's the same verse. But Daniel says, let me tell you the secret. Let me tell you how to atone for your sins. This is amazing. Listen, if you know this, you're going to be all right. Now, remember, the temple, during this time, the first temple was destroyed. The second temple had not yet been built. It's between the temples during that 70-year period. And we are frequently pressed and going, how do you Jews have an atonement for your sins? You don't have a temple. You don't have a sacrifice. You don't have an altar. Where is your blood? Have you heard that? I think you may have heard that once before. If you didn't hear that, it means you live in Saudi Arabia, where there are no Christians. Certainly, if they're Christians, they're hiding. That's always the question is, what do you do when you don't have a blood offering, you don't have a sacrifice? Where is your blood? And without the shedding of blood, there is no atonement. Misquoting Leviticus 17 and quoting really Hebrews chapter 9, verse 22. Well, as it turns out, we are told many times in Proverbs all over that charity is uniquely powerful in that tzedakah is tatzel, literally saves you from death. Charity is unique in that a person who feeds the hungry, who clothes the naked, who cares for the orphan and the widow, such a person, you can have all your sins forgiven. Giving charity atones for sin. And in fact, Daniel didn't say you need the blood. Daniel didn't say believe in Jesus or any of that stuff, or Jesus is going to come in 500 years and just lock in your annuities now. He told them what any Orthodox Jew would tell anyone asking that question. That is, all right, here's the tzur, listen carefully. If you give charity, it means take care of the poor, the orphan, the weakest members of society, God will forgive your sin.
Mama. So that is the level of deception in the end of days. Now, we can pray for this individual that his eyes be open, but right now he's speaking blasphemy. and probably pulling a lot of his understanding from the Babylonian Talmud, the satanic Babylonian Talmud, that much of the content of the Talmud, the Babylonian Talmud, came from where? Babylon, from when they returned from the exile in Babylon. So we have to be aware of the deception that's going on there. And this individual is just saying, charity atones for your sin. That is the blasphemous, and it's the furthest from the truth. And so we have to see how the enemy twists the scriptures. And not only that, the book of Daniel prophesied exactly when the Messiah, Yahusha, came the first time, for which they will not talk about that now, will they? And that's why when we are studying and understanding these timelines, we have to be wise and understanding, and we have to understand these timelines. They're so important, and how Charlene has shared with us, they are exact and they are indisputable. And so we have to understand the nature of our enemy, that the enemy comes as an angel of light. The 7-year timeline began with the speaking voice. The word was still in the sovereign's mouth when a voice fell from the heavens. Sovereign Nebuchadnezzar, to you it is spoken. The reign has been taken away from you. So again, these prophetic keys, hermeneutic principles, identifying and helping us walk through the scriptures, not only in chapter 4, but as we go along. And we already acknowledged these keys before. We also see in verse 32, and you are driven away from men, and your dwelling is to be with the beast of the field. You are given grass to eat like oxen, and 7 seasons shall pass over you, until you know that the Most High is ruler in the reign of men, and he gives it to whomever he wishes. In that hour, the word was executed on Nebuchadnezzar, and he was driven from men, and he ate grass like oxen, and his body was wet with the dew of the heavens, till his hair had grown like eagle's feathers, and his nails like birds' claws. And Charlene has identified that as lycanthropy, a condition that a person can almost take on the features of a wolf or a wolf man. And so that was what was allotted to Nebuchadnezzar for 7 years before he's restored. So in prophetic key number 7, Daniel gave the king the application of the prophecy, and within 12 months, the prophecy began to be fulfilled. And within the next 7 years, the fulfilled prophecy became history, the timeline completed, without a doubt, based on history, the exactness of that prophecy. Now, I'd like for us to also glean from chapter 4 the definition of beast and a beast kingdom. And Kimberly Rogers Brown, I watched one of her teachings, and again, some of these teachings, and I don't agree with everything everyone says, and none of us are going to, but this was very, very good. And she gave the definition of beast based on Daniel. She said a biblical beast is a foreign nation that has conquered and occupied Jerusalem, the Holy Land, the promised land. And she brings out that a biblical beast is also a man. So we see Nebuchadnezzar became a beast, and we know he was a king of a beast kingdom because it did usurp the land of Jerusalem. And Yahweh allowed it because the house of Judah would also not repent, as did the house of Israel did not repent prior to their exile to Assyria. And now Judah was exiled to Babylon. So So with that in mind, we see Babylon covered that area of Jerusalem at the time. We're going to see Medo-Persia territory also did the same with Greece, and the same with pagan imperial Rome. It was in control of Yahweh's holy land, of Yahweh's promised land. And the governmental beast, we read in Daniel, we will eventually get there, chapter 7, 2 and 3, Daniel spoke and said, I saw in my vision by night, and behold, the four winds of the heavens strove upon the great sea, and four great beasts came up from the sea, diverse from one from another. So we have beast men, we have beast kingdoms, and we have governmental beast. And we are going to see more and more of this conglomeration, mystery Babylon come together. And at the end of the days, I, Nebuchadnezzar, lifted my eyes to the heavens, and my understanding returned to me. And I blessed the Most High and praised and made him great, who lives forever, whose rule is an everlasting rule, and his reign is from generation to generation. And all the inhabitants of the earth are of no account. And he does as he wishes with the host of the heavens and among the inhabitants of the earth. And there is none to strike against his hand or say to him, what have you done? At the same time, my understanding returned to me, and for the preciousness of my reign, my esteem and splendor were returning to me, and my counselors and nobles sought me out, and I was reestablished to my reign, and excellent greatness was added to me. Now I, Nebuchadnezzar, am praising and exalting and esteeming the sovereign of the heavens, for all his works are truth, and his ways right. And those who walk in pride, he is able to humble. So Nebuchadnezzar turned and praised Yahweh. Did good works follow that? Probably. He in that clip, it was like he had become a new creation, just like all of us become a new creation. And from our repentance and restoration and in our relationship with Yahweh, then out of our love flows our desire to do good works. So this timeline ends with good news in verse 36. Now we see this gate of Ishtar in this picture above. And this is, again, reflective of the time period of Nebuchadnezzar. So we constantly see these links to that time period. We saw the link to when Obama was at the throne of Satan, June 19th, 2013. He had a replica built of the altar of Zeus at Pergamus. So this replica resembles this same throne of Satan, if you will, the altar of Zeus. And this was the altar right here in this photo, and it's very similar with his podium. So you can't make this stuff up. So anyway, I'm just giving you some insights and pictures to connect how Mystery Babylon is very much alive. And so we have to be aware and very alert at the days we live in. Do we fear? No, fear not, for he is with us. Be not dismayed, for he is our Elohim. He will strengthen us. He will help us. He will uphold us with his righteous right hand. But at the same time, we need to be aware of these things, because we do live in unprecedented times. Now, I'm going to share one last clip, and then we're going to conclude. And this is another perspective of eschatology. And right after this, I'm going to show us how it's all coming together.
Church members, Pastor Steve Cioccolanti here with a major prophetic update. I was actually waiting for other prophecy teachers to give this update, but I haven't really seen much on YouTube, so I think it's my job to bring this to you. I can say now, after 20 years, I can say that I have been telling people there's no need to look to Brussels or France or Rome for the Antichrist. The Antichrist is going to come from a former Gentile empire that oppressed Israel, that is in the Middle East. That's Islam, and some Islamic empire. And I said for years and years, you're going to need to look to Egypt and Syria and Turkey and eventually Iran. And look at what's happened. It's literally in that order. First, we had the Arab Spring in Tunisia, spread to Egypt, and then Mubarak got ousted and he's already dead. Then we look to Syria, where we've got unrest, civil war, terrorism going on in Syria. It's just ravaged. Damascus is being destroyed. Now, the old center of the greatest caliphate, the greatest Islamic empire, is called the Ottoman Empire, is reviving. And Recep Erdogan, the current leader of Turkey, has been in power for 18 years. He has changed the constitution so that he can be, lifetime dictator. He's come in and interfered with Syria and with Libya. He's currently sending arms and shipments to Libya because Libya is divided. There are two governments vying for power, and Turkey's right there in the middle of it. Saudi Arabia is in there as well. Obviously, America has been in there. Italy's in there. My goodness, there's like another Syria brewing over in North Africa. And Recep Erdogan definitely wants to be the person to broker the peace. He wants to be the power broker. But his crowning moment has actually come this month. On Friday, the 24th of July, a Muslim imam that he sanctioned ascended the pulpit of the Hagia Sophia with an Ottoman sword. Imagine that. Imagine walking into a church. The Hagia Sophia was built as a church. It is the largest church in the world. And he goes up the steps, the staircase of the pulpit with an Ottoman sword, a symbol of we have come to conquer and we're on conquest.
Yeah. صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما.
Recep Erdogan and all of his senior ministers were present for the first Friday Muslim prayer in this now former church, the Hagia Sophia. It's the first Muslim prayer in 86 years. The date is not lost on them as well. It's very symbolic because the 24th of July is the 97th anniversary of the signing of the Treaty of Lausanne. This was the final treaty that ended World War I and stripped the Ottoman Empire of much of its territory and drew the current boundaries of the modern state of Turkey, and then ended the occupying forces of Britain, France, Italy, and Greece. They all left Turkey, and Turkey became recognized as a modern state. Therefore, on the 24th of July, this date now has a double meaning for Turkish sovereignty. And they decided to go and have Muslim prayer for the first time in the largest Christian church in the world on this date. Erdogan said, "This is Hagia Sophia breaking away from its chains of captivity. It was the greatest dream of our youth. It was the yearning of our people, and it has been accomplished." The Greek Orthodox Church leaders held vigils describing Friday as a day of mourning. The history of the Hagia Sophia, which means divine wisdom, is that it was built in the year 537 by the Christian Byzantine Emperor Justinian. It was dedicated to divine wisdom, which is the Logos, the Word of God, in other words, the Lord Jesus Christ, the second person of the Trinity. In honor of this, it was the world's largest Christian cathedral. And it's very symbolic, even if we as born-again believers might say, well, you know, they haven't really preached the gospel there, been getting people saved there. Yeah, but it's symbolic of Christianity.
Okay, so I wanted to just share several clips and bring into view how Mystery Babylon, how the beast is rising, but at the same time, Yahweh is bringing together his people and Israel is rising. Because in essence, to keep it simple, the book of Revelation is a battle between good and evil. And it's a battle that has already been fought and won by Yahusha against Satan. And we also know it's a battle over the birthright and blessing between Esau and Jacob. So previously in one of our studies, I used the acronym ROAM to help us be very mindful of the end time beast being a conglomerate, chimera, if you will, mixture as we continue in our Daniel study. Is Rome pertinent? Absolutely. Is the Ottoman Empire pertinent? Absolutely. Is Maimonides, Rambam, and Menachem Mendel Schneerson, the Chabad Lubavitch Noahide laws pertinent for these end times? To be aware of that? Absolutely. Are evil, unholy global political, religious, and social alliances happening? Absolutely. Are proclamations made to get people to obey? Absolutely. You know, and eschatology is unfolding. And we see traditional church pastors and others bring forth their insights. And we know in eschatology, anyone that has, you know, read Revelation, anyone that's heard sermons on eschatology, we know the division that's there. We know some are just pre-trib, adamant pre-trib. We know some are adamant mid-trib. We know some are adamant post-trib, pre-wrath. But at the same time, is it possible that all of them are a little bit right? Could it be the catching away follows the harvest cycles? You know, because the harvest of his Moedim, they all have first fruits within them. I mean, just we know the spring feast has the Moedim of first fruits, but even the Pentecost harvest has first fruits, and even the end time grape and olive harvest, there's first fruits. So is it possible that in a way, the catching away, there may be a cycle of catching away? We know the two witnesses are caught up to heaven in Revelation 11. We know that the baby that is birthed in Revelation 12 is taken to the throne room of Yahweh. So we know that there's also a harvest later on in Revelation. So here again, as we study this end time beast that is coming together, mystery Babylon, it's a conglomeration, most definitely including Rome and Ottoman Empire and those that say they are Jews and are not, and evil, unholy political alliances. We went over this. We looked at the map of Islam in 612 and 750 AD. We looked at the Abbasid Caliphate in 750 to 1258. You see the territory that they covered. All of those areas here and up here, all of these different colors up here are covered, and all of this. And you see the little red circle, that is the Jerusalem, the land of Jerusalem. So this is a beast kingdom, right? We see the Ottoman Empire during that time period, Beast Kingdom. And we know the decline of the Ottoman Empire, and especially in 1920 AD, we see how little it became. So it too suffered a head wound, just as Rome, the papacy, suffered a head wound. We make note of these things and so forth. But the key thing where I'm at right now, and y'all may disagree with me, but there is truth with almost all of these insights. We see this beast coming and connecting with one another. It's a good and evil. If you look at it that way, there's a conglomerate of people and nations coming together for evil, and then we have the one new man being formed through Yahushua HaMashiach, forming Israel. So those were some of the things that I wanted to bring out in this session. And we don't have time to really get into the appendix notes of chapter 4 in your PDF handout, but please take time to read through those pages and understand the replication of the 7 literal year timeline being stated 4 times, and just read through these notes, because it will just solidify what we have learned, and how any timeline encased with symbolic language must be converted from symbolic time to literal time, and any timeline encased with literal context simply stays as literal time, as in chapter 4. So these insights are all given in the appendix of chapter 4 in your handout. So that concludes what I wanted to review and just share with y'all. It was some amazing things. My sister Carol Ann came across some of those clips, and I was just really appalled, especially that one about Daniel 4:27. And the understanding of those temple coins was very revealing, showing that connection of then and now, and how they're holding on to a lot of that. Yes, Cheryl and April. I see Cheryl, and then I saw April. Okay, Cheryl.
My question was just a simple question, because I was taking notes when it was talking about the Muslim prayer that they did for the first time. In how many years was that?
Oh gosh, I think it was
86.
Was
86?
it? Yeah.
I remember it being 86.
Okay,
yeah, I think you're right, Christine.
I was thinking 70 or 90, or I was thinking 96, but 86.
I heard 97th, but I don't think, I think that was when the treaty, I'm not sure. I'd have to re-listen to it, but I think
Okay.
Christine may be right, 86.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay.
97th for the treaty. Signing of the
Okay,
treaty,
90.
97th.
Okay, Kim.
You were right on that, yeah.
Okay, thanks. Okay, April.
I have 2 things. I would like to have that website where you were talking about the coins. That was
Okay.
very interesting. And then my second question, I want to direct it to Charlene, because I've been waiting since last week to ask this question. Charlene, how do you view the 2300 days in our day, in our time frame?
I haven't done any work in that area, so I can't help you. I know that others have, and I really do feel like Libby that there's lots of different people looking at the timelines. And because I've been involved with calendars so much in the last 10 years, I haven't had a chance to look at the timelines in a future application, especially the Daniel ones. But I would just say, you know, look at everything that you can find. Just like Libby said, there's going to be truth, a little bit of truth everywhere. At this point in time, I don't know if anybody has all of the truth for the timelines. I really don't. It's quite a puzzle, but you know, take Daniel 4 and be watching for those decrees, those speaking voices that have to start the timelines. And and just like prophecy, I don't know when it's happened until the moment it has happened.
Right.
Then you can go say, oh yeah, there it is, right? But you'll learn that in Daniel chapter 5 next time. So I'm sorry I can't help you.
What's with the red bowls? What is that?
Oh, okay. That's the red heifer. That was under the book of the law for cleansing people that were contaminated by handling a dead body or coming back from war, Mary Beth. So that was actually a way of cleansing the people back in the day before Yahusha. Okay.
Yeah.
And
He doesn't like that, right?
It's no longer needed, but there
Right.
is an analogy that the red heifer represents Yahusha and his bride, okay? Because Yahusha was sacrificed outside the gate, and that's where the red heifer was sacrificed. Now, again, I had listened to a study by Kimberly Rogers Brown, and this was something I had never considered before, but I kind of questioned it because it was a heifer. And she equates the red heifer as also representing the bride, and most certainly also is inclusive of Yahusha and the Ruach HaKodesh, but the bride also must go outside the gate to the altar, because it's the altar that sanctifies the gift. And so we go to the altar outside the gift instead of these man-made altars that they are promoting in the current state of Israel through mainly the Chabad Lubavitch, to get the animal sacrifices reinstituted, which all of this is all significant. And so in their mind, because they are persevering with the so-called Aaronic Levitical priesthood, they're wanting to stay under their book of the law instead of recognizing the transference of priesthoods through Yahusha, and with that came the transference, the change of law to the Melchizedek priesthood. So that is what we're faced with presently, what they're doing. And they're
That's
trying
false.
to, yes,
They shouldn't
that's
be
false.
doing that. Right.
That's correct, Mary Beth. But Christian Zionism has deceived many of the people in the traditional church settings, and we are pouring money to Israel. And the connection that the U.S. has with Israel is, I mean, almost too much, if you will, because we have so many congressmen. It was reported in 2018, we had 89 congressmen with dual citizenships in Israel and U.S. So my question at one point is, who's running the United States? Because there are many boasting in Israel that this country does exactly what Israel tells it to do. I'm starting to see that might be a possibility, because his word says we cannot serve two masters, because you're either going to hate the one and love the other. So so there's a lot of things going on there, and the ties there are almost, in my opinion, way too tight, to the point that we're fighting so many of the current state that has usurped the name Israel. We're fighting so many wars as well. So there's a lot of stuff going on, and we know about the lion whose the wings are clipped from the lion. I have some more insights on that. But if the wings are the United States, if it does turn out to be so, then when the enemy is finished using us for its purposes, very possibly the United States may suffer. We will wait and see. And we know if the United States suffers, usually Canada will also suffer due to the close proximity. Charlene, yes, please.
Just a short comment on the red heifer, Mary Beth. That is a really good question. And a lot of people don't understand the red heifer. And as soon as even people that have heard about the feast and they know about the red heifer, as soon as that comes up, everybody says, well, they just don't understand it. So I just wanted to let you and everybody else know that Tim has been researching this for almost a year. And I think he's hoping to give those presentations maybe in the month of September or for sure around the fall feast. So if you're interested, and of course it'll be connected to calendar as well, some very interesting things that we have found. And so I just want to let you know,
Okay.
yeah, because we have learned a lot about the red heifer by just looking, and it's going to be really exciting. So it might tie into what you're learning here in Daniel. So just
Okay.
a little heads up.
Thank you.
Okay. You're welcome.
Crazy.
Yes, indeed. Cheryl and then Mary.
Yes, I was going to ask Charlene if that was going to be included in the covenant calendar. Is that where they're going to present it?
For the red heifer?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, it will be. So just watch the announcements in the newsletter. We are having other presenters for the month of August. Tim and I are taking a little break from teaching in the month of August. But just watch the newsletters, and I'm not sure. He just sent me another PowerPoint today to edit. I haven't even looked at one slide. So these things just take a lot of time, but I don't know the time frame, but I know it will be after the end of August.
I watch them weekly. Will it be titled something red heifer, or will we know
Probably something along with the red heifer. Yeah, okay. I think so. It's actually a continuation of the Joshua's sickle series, when we were talking about the sickle series, and we were talking about the Omer counts and whatnot, you know, the proper count to wave sheaf. It's still part of that series. It's just that the research was a little bit more than we expected, and we've been very busy. So
I'll be looking forward
hope
to
that
it.
helps.
Thank you.
Yeah, we are too.
It'll be interesting too. Has Tim seen that video clip I shared with y'all tonight? I thought that was very interesting. I had not known they had two candidates, so hopefully he can use that and tie that in. That would be interesting. And Yahoo is just, what's so amazing is Yahoo was just lifting the veil and just exposing so much truth, and his people are just blooming, and it's just so exciting. Mary, oh yeah, Mary Beth.
On one of the coins, what did they say? Who's the king? What do they mean by that? On one of the coins in the back of
King
the coin.
King Cyrus was a king of Medo-Persia that arises after King Babylon, and Yahweh ordained King Cyrus to have the house of Judah return to build the wall and the temple after it had been destroyed after 70 years. And so today they're associating that King Cyrus, equating that act with President Trump, since he's been such a supporter, and his son and daughter are both Chabad Lubavitch practicers, if you will. And
his son-in-law.
Sorry,
Son-in-law.
I didn't say son. Yeah, son-in-law, and he's relocated the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem and has done several things like that. So they're making that connection between King Cyrus and elevating, if you will, Trump to that level of significance. So another good question, Mary Beth. And Mary, you had a question?
Yes, I wanted to, 1 second. I wanted to, I'm trying to get the book out. There's one thing I wanted to say about that guy that you had on, about the forgiveness. I mean, not forgiveness, but getting into heaven by giving, you know, to charity. But that's Catholicism. All my life, it was the penance that you had to do to earn. Not when you asked for forgiveness, then you had to say Hail Marys, you had to do all this other stuff. And back in the day, before the Hail Marys, you had to give money, you had to do certain acts for your penance. You had to earn, in other words, your forgiveness, and earn your way into heaven. Because I know so many people, they give, like, they build churches and these altars, and they think that's the way they're going to get to heaven.
That's right. That's right,
and
Mary.
It's such a
I know.
I'm Catholic. But I don't give money to the church. So, and I hardly ever go to church. I just pray to, you know, God, Yeshua. Believe in them. I don't always agree with what the Catholic Church says, but
I was Catholic, and then I learned about Mary and praying to all the saints. There is only one mediator between God and man, and it's Yeshua. And so they made Mary more important than Yeshua.
I just saw about my story too. That's a lie. I saw a whole thing about that.
You guys see this book? It's kind of backwards. I got this before I knew about the Melchizedek priesthood, and I got it off of the Civil. But it's the Rabbi Donald Trump Third Temple.
Wow, interesting.
So they have
that is interesting.
The Top Secret Plan to Build the Third Temple by Thomas Horn.
Yeah.
Now, you said the Third Temple really is building us, like people, not a literal temple.
Right. We are the temple, Mary Beth, because when we give our life to Yahweh and repent and ask for forgiveness of sins, and he comes into our heart, then his Ruach, his Holy Spirit, lives in us. And so that's where that identifies the temple, is where his Holy Spirit is. So he's building us up together, one body with many parts, into the one new man, Israel. And so you are now part of his body, the congregation, us coming together like tonight, Mary Beth. I mean, this is fellowshipping, and this is studying his word, whether it's a Tuesday night Bible study or whether it's observing Shabbat, his Moedim, of coming together. And it's our bridal rehearsals, because he meets with us on Shabbats, and he meets with us on his Moedim, and he's preparing us for his return. And he will speak to us just like he spoke to King Nebuchadnezzar. He will lead and guide us and tell us where to go and where to be. So praise Yah. Yes, Christine.
I just wanted to say we are living stones, Mary Beth.
I just believe in them, and I love them with all my heart and soul. And I think that's all that matters, really. You know, just to love them, and Yah and Joshua, and that's it. That's the most important thing.
And love one another, absolutely. Betty, I'm sorry, Christine, I'm sorry. Yes, go ahead.
I just wanted to say that to Mary Beth, but I wanted to say, I wanted to ask Charlene if she knew of the dates of the fall feast this year.
Yes, I do. Libby, I'll send you the calendar because I don't know if I have Christine's email, and maybe you can share the feast calendar with your mailing list. How does that sound?
Oh yeah, that'd be great.
And it is on the website as well, Christine. If you go to study the calendar, you will find the calendar there. Absolutely. Okay. But I will send it to Libby.
Okay. And
I'll
one
write
last,
that down.
and one last thing, I can see tonight, as it's been highlighted, how the modern day Christianity church sees it as such a good thing that United States is joining Israel, and they're becoming strongly connected. And I had this conversation with my husband, who still believes that the state of Israel is Yah's people, God's people, and that we should bless them, that we would be blessed. And he's still very much into the church, the modern day Christianity church. So he represents just what all of them think, and so tonight was very special to see. No, it is not. That is not, is a counterfeit Israel, counterfeit Yah's people.
And we do know that there are believers scattered all over the earth, and there are true believers there in the present day Israel. But again, that's the counterfeit Israel, and it's deceiving many. And I can totally relate to your husband, because we were right in there with him. It's a great, huge deception, and powerful pastors have been placed in pulpit positions to deceive the masses, and under their thinking, they can even have permission to lie and deceive. It's awful. It's awful. But Yahweh has given us eyes to see. He sure has.
I think the biggest thing he said is, oh my word, you can look at the state of Israel and see how many times people have come up against them, and yet each time they've conquered. And for them to become a state, that is only the hand of God. So this is some of the thoughts that they have.
That's right.
That it is only the hand of God. How can you say they're not God's people?
It's a great deception. Yes.
Yeah.
And Yahweh is bringing Israel together, but it's the living stones, as you mentioned earlier, from all over the earth. And he's gathering the 12 tribes and those grafted in, but all have to enter through the door, because there is neither Jew nor Greek, slave nor free, male nor female. And also the biblical definition of Jew is one that has been circumcised of heart, one that is a believer in Yahushua HaMashiach. That is the true Jew. And so the enemy uses that term Jew, and it's been grossly misused. Yes, Charlene, and then Jeanette.
First of all, I better address this one first about Israel. I have a friend that's been to Israel many times, and I haven't, and I don't know why. I don't even have a desire to go there. It just seems like I don't have the pull like some people do. But he said, it is a very wicked place. He said they are not keeping Torah, most of them. He said it's not what you expect. Yes, it is the Holy Land. It's where Yahushua walked, and I'd love to see those places and walk where he walked. But I'll do it when he comes, right? But no, the land of Israel, yes, it is a special place, but it's always been the hot spot. It's been the hot spot of real estate right from the day that it was born. But anyway, aside from that, just to address for Mary Beth again, salvation is only through the blood. It's only through accepting the blood of Yahushua, that he died for you on the cross to cover your sins. But just last week, at Covenant Calendar Club, we had Catherine do a little presentation on rewards and the crown. And so our works that we do, which are actually Yahuwah's works through us in order to plant seeds for the gospel and for the harvest, those works are rewarded. with special
Yes.
crowns and special rewards.
Yes.
That is but that's not salvation.
Right.
That is part of our working with Yahusha to restore our relationship with him, so we can continue to be a living stone and not a dead one, or a deaf one maybe.
Right.
But
right.
our work that we do as we continue on when we've accepted him, that's part of our relationship. And I like the word restoration, because that is part of our restoration. We don't work for our salvation. We do that because we love him that gave us salvation. It's a little bit of a different way to look at it. And
Yeah,
it's really
right.
special. Some of us need 50 years to learn that. Okay. But anyway, if you have a chance to see that little presentation from Covenant Calendar last week, I think you'll really enjoy it, because it was very uplifting.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Good. Yeah, because we missed you last week. You were busy, but that's okay.
Yeah, busy.
That's all. Yeah, we're all busy. Absolutely.
Yes, indeed. Okay, Jeanette. Thank you, Charlene.
Yeah. Okay, I'll just give a comment. Libby, you had mentioned something about the name Jew, how it's being misrepresented. Sorry,
Right.
I got Tim's phone is going off over here. He's in the other room. Okay, so I just wanted to mention that actually the term Jew was, Nebuchadnezzar made that up. He called all the people that he drew out of the land of Judea, he called them all Jews, but they weren't all of Jews. You know what I mean? They weren't all Yehudim. Okay, so he actually was the first one to use that term Jew. And then ever since then, though, it's been so misused, and it's just snowballed in all false meaning and everything. It's really a muddle.
Right, it really is. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So there's different kinds of Jewish people? Different kinds of Jewish people?
There is a whole line, along with what they've been mentioning about the falseness that's been being built up in Israel. Those people call themselves Jews, but they're really false. They're not true blood of the line of Israel at all.
How do you
That's
know?
a good question, Mary Beth. How do we know? We don't
I'll let
know.
my cat-
Honestly, with Yahusha.
Yeah, my cat.
Okay.
My cat.
With Yahusha, the genealogy doesn't come into play as it did with the Aaronic Levitical priesthood. And so we are washed by the blood of the Lamb. And even if you are from the original olive tree, let's say, and you weren't grafted in, you still need to come through the door through the blood of the Lamb.
You mean through Yeshua?
So genealogy stuff, it doesn't matter. In his kingdom, there's neither Jew nor Greek, slave nor free, male or female. We are all one in him. So now today, a lot of times Jews will be referred to as those that practice Judaism, just secular Judaism, those that just have not had eyes to see who Yahusha is and that he came the first time. And then there are those that act like they're Jews and are not, and they call the Bible they call their Torah this Babylonian Talmud. So it's very, very confusing, Mary Beth, and that's why many of us had gone through that confusion, and many of our family members are still in that confusion. And that's what the enemy has done. That's what the enemy.
Because I thought that it was great that you're going together with Israel. It's not a good thing.
Well, who is Israel, Mary Beth? We are. See, once you are born anew, born again through the blood, we are Israel. We are his firstborn. We are one body with many members, many parts coming together. And so we are the true Israel, and the false Israel is a man declared nation named Israel to add to the confusion.
They make their own rules too.
Right. The Sanhedrin court was reestablished in 2004. Those seats that you saw underground in what he called the chamber of hewn stone, that is present there. And
Doesn't
that is
Yeshua
where
hate them? He doesn't like them. Yeshua doesn't like.
we have to remember that Yahusha doesn't want any to perish, but all to come to the saving knowledge of him.
Right.
However, there will be some that turn their noses up at that, and that's their choice. His desire is that none perish, but some will, because they refuse and they will rebel to the very end. And those that call themselves Jews and are not are setting themselves up to be an international court system. And those were those 70 seats that you saw underground, has many tentacles there. And we know that the Noahide laws believes in beheading, just like Sharia law believes in beheading. And the Noahide laws, if with only one witness, that's all they would need. So that's not even biblical, because in his word, it always says it takes 2 witnesses to condemn someone to death. So that's the evil level rising. But we fear not, because we are washed in the blood of the Lamb. We are his. And but we do take all these things in. And you're right on trying to get your head wrapped around it, Mary Beth, because it's difficult. But you are just a sponge soaking it up, and you will get it. The more you hear it, the more repetition, it will all come together, because we're still all learning and we're helping one another. And then Christine and Betty had a question. Okay.
Thank you.
And Kathleen may have. I just saw your hand, Kathleen. So I'm sorry if I missed your hand. I was looking at these little blue hands. So we'll get. Did you go ahead, Kathleen, and then if you don't mind, Christine, and then Betty and Charlene.
This has all been. I haven't made any comments tonight yet, but I've really. Oh, this is tremendous to understand this about the meaning of a Jew, and also the blood ratified covenant of Exodus. Comes here too, correct? Of Exodus 24, blood ratified covenant we have as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Praise Yah. Okay, Christine?
Okay, I just had a quick question. So in the end, are we going to all come together there in Jerusalem when Yahusha comes back for his bride?
He's going to gather us. He's going to be the one to gather us, and he's going to be the one to tell us where to go, or he's going to get us there. And sometimes we don't know how that's going to unfold, just like with Jacob and the 11 patriarchs that go to meet Joseph in Egypt. It was a severe famine that made them coalesce and travel to Egypt for the food, and they settled in Goshen and were considered unclean because they were shepherds. And so the events we're faced with today with this COVID-19, that might be a way, because we will be the ones that refuse the vaccine, that may be a way that they coalesce us together. But Yahweh is in control. That may be a way that we are gathered together, or it may be more miraculous, as in Revelation 12, we're given 2 wings as an eagle and flown to the wilderness to be nourished. We'll have to wait and see. But don't fear, don't get ahead of him. He will give us clear instructions not to go just on our own to this place or that place. We have to hear from him, because sometimes there's a lot of buzz about that too, and different theories on that. So
that we're all supposed to be gathered in Israel.
he's going to gather us, and it's all going to be, however he does it, it's going to be, he's going to be in control. Yes.
Why can't he make it Israel here then? If people live here, he could make a thing, because he could be anywhere, really.
It very well could be, Mary Beth. It could be several cities
Locations.
of refuge. It could be cities of refuge that he
Right.
ordains to gather us in various, because we're all over the globe.
Yeah. Yeah.
Only he can gather us, and only he knows the sheep from the goats. I mean, we have an idea because we know each other by our fruit, but only he truly knows the heart.
Yeah.
And only he knows the sheep from the goats.
Yeah.
Yes. And Betty?
Yeah, I just was blessed with what I believe to be a little more understanding of the timelines that I thought was really went well with our Daniel study. A teacher that I listened to on Shabbat was pointing out the fact that when Yahusha was asked if he was the king, and he wouldn't answer, and like the teacher said, he purposely did not answer, because if he had spoken, he would have been, and that would have disrupted the whole line of events that Yahuwah had planned. And so the timelines, Yahuwah is not in our time. I mean, he's in a space that there is no time. He's been forever. It's not he was, he is, he will be. He's been forever. And so I hope I'm stating this well enough that you can get what I'm grasping at. But the teacher was pointing out that the timelines are important because it keeps the events in their proper place so that things don't happen out of time and mess up God's plan for us.
That's right.
And maybe others of you had understood that. That was huge to me, and it just brought a whole more importance to these timelines. And yeah, so thank you.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Betty. Yes, I mean, learning about the timelines is very awesome, and learning about the exactness of the timelines and how they begin, how they end, all these things, and understanding symbolic versus literal. I mean, yeah, it's just very, very important. And so now as we go through his word on Shabbats, and, you know, if we go back through Revelation even again, it's going to come together. And I can't wait for us to get further into Daniel and apply what we're learning, because we are learning, and we're learning together. So Charlene, yes.
Yeah, two comments. First to Betty. If Yah knows the end from the beginning, which he does, then this statement is also true. He knows no haste and no delay. That means that he knows exactly when anything has to happen. He's got it all figured out right down to the minute. And so we can trust him. That's why those timelines are so exact, because he knows that if he's going to shorten them or lengthen them, that those timelines won't mean a thing to us. We won't be able to understand what's going on. And, you know, like we talked about last week. So he doesn't know any haste or any delay. Everything's right on time. Aside from that, back to the Jews, there is a verse in John 4, let me see, 22, and it's in Yahusha's words. And this is what it says in most Bibles. I'm in the New King James. It's for, Yahusha says, you worship what you do not know. He's talking to the woman at the well, okay? And he says, but we know what we worship. And here's the part I want you to hear. For salvation is of the Jews. And that has been so misused and abused that it's really a crime. And I was raised this way too, that The Jews know when Sabbath is, and they've always kept the Sabbath, and they ought to know. And Sabbath starts at sunset. That's just one example, okay? But the Jews were the keepers of the holy oracles. Yes, they were. But that's the excuse that's used to say that they were following them. But they don't really follow all of the Torah. Okay, they have got a lot of traditions and a lot of Talmud stuff, and they're straight out of Babylon. This verse here, if we actually just understand it for what it's saying, who is salvation? Who is salvation? That's Yahusha. That's what his name means, salvation. He's telling the woman at the well, salvation, that's me. It's not of the Jews, but it's going to come out of Judea. Salvation is going to happen right here in this territory because he was born in Bethlehem, and Bethlehem is in Judea, even though his mother was of the tribe of Aaron. She was a cousin to Elizabeth. She was from the tribe of Levi, in the Aaronic priesthood end of things, not just anywhere. And Joseph, the stepfather, traveled back from Nazareth, which is 75 miles north or so in Galilee, traveled back to Bethlehem, his place of residence, for that taxing that the Caesars had ordered. That's how Yahusha got born in Judea. So what he's saying here in John 4:22 is really so simple, Mary Beth. He's saying, woman, salvation, that's me. And salvation's going to come out of this tribe. It's going to happen right here in Judea. Now, he was up in Samaria. This was a Samaritan lady. That was north of Judea. Samaria was kind of the ham in the sandwich, if you want to say it, or the lettuce in the sandwich. It was in between Galilee and Judea. Yeah, well, you can use ham if you want. But that's what that verse means. That's what that verse means. He was talking about himself. And yeah, and I've been taught all my life in a Christian church that, you need to follow what the Jews do and you need to do what they do because they know the Torah and they've kept the Torah. And I kind of wondered about that and thinking, oh, well, I heard it lots.
Not in my
basically
church,
all
never
my
heard
life
that.
until I
heard that.
Oh, well, in mine. But
Yeah.
you know what? My question was this: when I learned about the feasts and festivals, I'm thinking, well, then why doesn't my church follow the feasts and festivals? Because the Jews all do it. But you see, you have to watch, because just about every denomination picks and chooses what they want to keep and what they want to throw out. I just want to keep my fun things, and I'll just ditch the rest. No, if we're going to have a relationship and a restoration to Yahusha, it's what is in the Torah, what is in the Old Testament, the law and the prophets, and what did he say in the red words in the gospel? And then Paul follows up in all those other little letters.
You don't follow
agree.
the New Testament? You don't follow the New Testament?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
That's like the most
but the thing is, but now I'm learning, and I'm sure everybody on this panel is in the same boat. I'm learning that I did not really understand the New Testament because I never knew the Torah. I never understood what's in the Torah. That's our foundation. And if I'd have been taught that from the day I was born, you know what? I would had a better life. I know it. It would have been everything would have been so different. And I bet every person here today would testify the same thing. But we've all had to come out. And Yahusha knows who we are. He knows who our hearts are. And he brings us out. He leads us out and grafts us into his tree trunk, into his Torah, into him. He grafts us all in. That's why Libby keeps saying it's not Jew or Gentile or slave or free, man or woman, it doesn't matter. You all have to come and get grafted into him.
That's right.
I've heard that because he died for us, that you don't have to go to the back. You just start from the New Testament. You don't have to really learn the Old Testament.
But that's
I
what they
learned that too, Mary
promote.
Beth.
That's what they
But it's not
promote a
true.
lot,
You need
and
to
they-
know the whole thing from the beginning to the end.
Yes. It's
Right.
important to go to the beginning, but the modern day
Right.
churches promote just New Testament only and greasy grace. Just go out, just receive Jesus like fire insurance and go out and live life as you want. And
Yep.
that is a watered down gospel, if it can even be considered a gospel, because many of these traditional churches worship another Jesus, if you will. His whole word is important. Every jot and tittle. We look at his whole word and we know the end from the beginning. So if we don't know the beginning, it's going to be very difficult to understand the end and all that that it has in it for us. And Jeanette, you have a question?
Okay, a comment, I guess. Just a couple things that connected for me as you were, we were doing the scripture of Nebuchadnezzar's dream of the tree image. I couldn't help but remember, okay, so it was cut down and the branches were cut off, its leaves and fruit were scattered. And also, like Nimrod's tower was dismantled and all the people were scattered, it was Nebuchadnezzar that rebuilt Babylon on top of the foundation of Nimrod's city tower of Babel. I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yes, very interesting. Very interesting. That was a great connection.
Is it like we're repeating again from long ago? It like keeps repeating?
I think there's patterns.
Seems like it just repeats. Is that because nobody's learning? Why?
Mary Beth, I'm so impressed. You're just catching on to these concepts and principles, these Hebrew concepts. I'm amazed, you know, for the weeks that she has been with us and Covenant Calendar as well. She is picking up on these concepts, just incredible. It has taken us years to figure out. So, Mary Beth, the patterns in Scripture are so important. They're right from the very beginning, right from Genesis 1, the patterns are there. I'm really proud of you.
Thank you. Well, it's a help of you guys, you know.
So we have Kim and then Kathleen. Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, well, I was thinking too about, you just mentioned the pattern. So in the beginning, there's separation and then a bringing together of restoration. And so it is with Yah's people. His son is Israel, my firstborn son. And he divided his people into two houses. Well, they became divided like the house of Judah, the Jews, and the house of Israel, the other brothers. And the house of Israel was taken captive into Assyria, and they went among the nations, lost in a sense, and Judah, the Jews, were left. But it's interesting that Jeanette made that comment then. I didn't know that. So if they were left, if Israel was never heard from in a sense, but the Judah Jews were left in the land and Babylon came in, there may have been others that hadn't left, right? Maybe with Israel. And so when King Nebuchadnezzar took the Jews and some of the other tribes, maybe Asher, because we see Anna, a prophetess of Asher, in the New Testament spoken of. So when Yahusha was there in his ministry, it wasn't just Judah Jews, there were other tribal brothers.
Oh yeah.
Asher was there, we see it in Anna the prophetess, and perhaps others. But at that time then, because what Jeanette just said then is because Nebuchadnezzar had renamed the people group as Jews, that name stuck and was carried forth, and they always became known as Jews. We hear Paul say, I think it's Paul, you're not a Jew is not one who is outward, but one who is inward. So whose heart has been circumcised, cut, born open, given over to, truth, the word Yahusha, about the blood of Yahusha, accepting that to cover our sins. And it has been for all his people always. It was always about not an outward thing or a genealogy. It was always about the inward heart. And so we see the picture in the Old Testament, they're all pictures of Yahusha, everything, the red heifer. The sacrifices are all a picture. Can we see the pictures in the Old Testament? And it was for his people, for the Jew who went through all the temple sacrifices and everything. Could they see the picture? So when Messiah came, would they notice, would they see Messiah through the pictures as they kept them? And I believe that those leaders knew it. They knew that Yahusha was the Messiah, but they did not want to give up their authority.
That's right.
To him. And they knew, they recognized it was the people who did. The people had been kept from that information because they've been under the control of the leaders.
Right.
And so, praise Yah, he sent the living word. He sent Yahusha to walk out these things so we'd recognize him. And now we, as we come into covenant and accept these truths, then we become this shadow picture of what is coming. We are a shadow picture of the kingdom that is coming. And when people see us walking in Yah's ways, keeping Shabbat, keeping his holy days, eating clean, we are a picture of this coming kingdom. And that's how we show others who Yahusha is, who Yah is.
Yeah, that's how they recognize us, right, Kim? That's how
it is.
Because when they first saw us, we were like Joseph, dressed in Egyptian clothing and had the makeup on of the Egyptians, and his brothers didn't recognize him. But as we took off Egypt, if you will, as we peeled off those pagan holidays, as we learned his true name, as we started worshiping on Shabbat instead of Sunday, then now those will recognize Joseph, Ephraim. And they'll recognize us, and maybe some, like his word says, will become jealous. Well, wait a second. Well, they're worshiping on our Moedim because they claim those Moedim. But oh man, I mean, what you just shared was off the chart good, and the deception of the Sanhedrin to the people occurred then, and it's occurring now, as in that clip, and also through these Noahide laws, because they push keep the seven, and you go to heaven. That's blasphemy. And there's so many believers that are leaving traditional churches and becoming Noahides, thinking that these Jewish people that say they are Jews and are not are the real McCoy. So we have much to pray about. And Kathleen, you had your hand up, and then Jeanette.
Yeah, I just have about Daniel. The inclusion of Daniel in the Hebrew canon of Scripture also suggests an early date for its composition. I just wanted to make that statement. Okay.
Okay. What was about the date? I didn't track, Kathleen.
I said the inclusion of Daniel in the Hebrew canon of Scripture also suggests an early date for its composition.
Yes, and it's the most validated book of his word, and also it was relegated to the hagiographa section of the Bible, those smaller books, if you will, when it has such major importance, pointing to Messiah the first time and his return. So yeah, there's so much to that. Thank you, Kathleen. And Jeanette?
I was just going to continue from Kim, what you had started to say, that Israel was taken captive or exiled and that Judah stayed. It was not long after and Judah was exiled And that's when Nebuchadnezzar took them out of Judea. And only some of them came back. Cyrus had that, he had allowed Jews to go back to Jerusalem and rebuild the walls and the temple. But very, very, very few went back. But at the same time, there was all the more Babylonian ways that they came back with also. And there's now a whole new information that I've come across too. The schools of Babylonian Talmud that were all set up at that time in Babylon, they've continued. They actually still are there today. The most, that's the training facilities for the highest teachers of the Talmud. And they go out from there. If they're trained there, they go out from there and set up other schools all over the place. And very interesting that what the centuries later, 4 or 4.5 centuries later till Yahusha was born, at that time period that Yahusha came, it says in some sources that it was the most chaotic time in that place ever in history. The just such a confusion and chaos, and of who to following who. You didn't know. The people were very confused. So just interesting that at the time that Yahusha came, he came to kind of steer things back on track. And again, it's all perfect timing, perfect timelines, and so it's pretty cool.
Yes, at one point, Chuck Missler said there was only 50,000 that returned. And I don't know where he got that number from, but so that's the only amount that we're talking, very, very small amount. And we also know that before they were exiled, some Israelites had traveled into the southern kingdom region or stayed in that area. So there was a mix as well. And yes, one thing, like you were saying, Jeanette, about they're still training through these yeshivas, all this Babylonian Talmud. And of course, their desire is to become the international court system and usurp the United Nations. So if they have these international court systems all over the world, which they are already located, I covered that in the 4th video of the Noahide laws, and that's just a smidgen. That's just a smidgen of them. You see how they're very organized, and that beast head is rising for sure. Okay, well,
it's so crazy lately. It's like nutty. It's like
that's the perfect ending for this session.
Yeah, it's like Babylon.
Thank you.
That was a perfect ending for this session. And so anyway, we covered a lot of territory. You can unbuckle your seatbelts now. And we'll be moving on to Daniel chapter 5, but do look over the appendix. At some point, I do want to go over that fantastic timeline that Charlene lays out about the 430 years and 400 year timeline. That's important to understand, but we'll have to save it for another time. But yes, Vivian.
Kim, could you just repeat that? I was absent-minded while you said that, and everybody laughed, and I missed it.
Mary Beth, you want to say it again?
I thought it was Kim.
No, I just said everything is nuts these days. It's so
and
crazy.
I said, oh, that's
everything
Babylon.
is crazy.
Okay, got it.
Has it been recorded, Libby?
Yes, I did record it. Yeah, this was a good session to talk and chat too. Y'all let me know if y'all want me to include that or exclude that. I can do it either way. It was a lot of good questions and answers, and these are the things that people are wondering, and sometimes it's just sitting in this relaxed, time to be able to share and clear up misunderstandings. Okay. All right. Well, let's close in prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, we just praise you for just a wonderful evening of insights and just revealing truth to us through your Ruach HaKodesh. We thank you for each one of us gathered tonight and the beautiful insights and angles that you have revealed to them, and bringing that manna to the table so that we can all feed on it. We just thank you for your word. We just cannot thank you enough, and we love you. And I pray that you continue to be with us and with our family members and our friends, and may we be your witnesses during such a time as this. We love you in the name of Yahushua HaMashiach. Let it be so. Okay, everyone, save your chat. If anyone has trouble saving chat, I can always send the chat notes to you, okay?
Thank you, Libby.
And thanks, Libby, thanks, Libby, for a great class. I really enjoyed it. I really did. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks. Thanks to everybody.
Bye now.
Thank you, Charlene.
Such good
Libby,
comment.
wrote one question about the shofar. Do you
Okay.
just blow it on can you blow it anytime you want, or is it supposed to be only done on special occasions?
No, you can blow it anytime you want, as far as I know. It's just making a joyful noise to him, and it's also can be used on special occasions too.
Okay, just want to know.
Thank you, Kim.
Welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Kim. We really enjoyed that, and we're blessed.
I learned so much from all of you. Thank you.
Okay.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
Right.
What I was surprised to hear was that Haggai Sophia, remember I didn't know about that? A few weeks ago, I said, what are you guys talking about, Sophia? And here it was here. Wow.
Yes. That was
Did you give us a link to that guy's teaching?
I can. Do y'all think I should just include those links to those videos, except for maybe that one that is telling the false doctrine? Do y'all want those links?
Yes.
I want that one for sure at the
Yeah.
beginning there where I forget.
Yes, about the temple coins.
About the
And Libby,
temple?
about the 89 Congress that had the dual citizenship, where is that information? My husband said he looked it up and said it was proven to be fake. And I said, no, I think that they took it off, that you're not allowed to find it anymore, correct?
I have it. I have the link. It's hard to find if you don't have the link, because they have scrubbed the internet, and you should be able just to search with that. And you can, matter of fact, I included it in one of our sessions, because I found a current affirmation of that, and now they are tight-lipped. I mean, in 2018, they actually had the names of those with dual citizenship, and then they were like, oh, we don't need to let that information out. And this one guy asked the congressman, and they said, that's confidential, we don't get, so they've changed their tune on that. It's harder and harder to get that information, but I do have the backup original article of where I got that from.
Oh, I appreciate it if you could send it to me, because he's not finding it, and I assume that he probably, like you said, removed it.
Yeah.
Or diluted it or whatever.
But it's still there. Yeah. I'll send it to you.
I
But
appreciate
we do
it.
have to be mindful of misinformation. My husband's always preached to me, you can't believe everything on the internet. Well, that's true. We always, it's true. So we do have to be careful, Mary. So that's good that he's searching those things out and seeing if they be so. That's what we should do. Yeah.